every 3-year-old, 4-year-old, before they can possibly string a sentence together, can probably sing one of the Star Wars tunes.
I grew up such a huge fan of John Williams' music. In fact, he's probably the most influential composer on my own writing.
It's got that ingrained in the public consciousness. To be able to play with those toys is pretty cool. I'm Stephen Barton.
My name is Gordy Hab, and I'm one of the 2 composers on Jedi Fallen Order.
Relatively early on, Nick Laviers, who's our audio director, he was looking at the scope of it and was like, there's so much music in this, it's like one person isn't going to be able to write this, and this is huge.
Stephen Barton and I have been working together since Titanfall 2, and I wanted to bring him onto the project because I felt really strongly that he complemented what Gordy would be able to bring.
I got my start maybe 10 years ago working on Star Wars: The Old Republic, and it sort of snowballed from there, and I think I've written maybe somewhere in the ballpark of 20 hours of music for Star Wars projects so far.
We could look at it in terms of, you know, starting off with your theme.
Yeah,
and figuring
and how
out
we spot that
what
and-
moments we're going to do.
Yep.
We sit down and we'll play through sections of the game together, and we'll do kind of big spotting sessions while playing the game.
One of the things that's interesting about games generally now, but actually certainly this game, is that the line between cinematic and gameplay is becoming ever blurred.
Gameplay, you have to really think interactively. Like, this music may last 2 minutes, it may last 10 minutes. You have to sort of factor that in, like how you're building in loops or building in, you know, alternate endings or layering system where you might need to ramp up the intensity of the music, for example. But then writing for cutscenes was much more like writing for a film, where you have a finite timeline and you're writing music to fit that finite timeline.
We started out, I think, by really looking at themes of the main characters, and so you have this unique challenge with Star Wars where everyone knows all the Star Wars themes, and so it's like being asked to, you know, put an extra 6 feet on the top of the Great Pyramid.
We were trying to see how far we could push the boundaries of the John Williams vibe with it still feeling like it was in the Star Wars universe.
We start with such a small little cell of an idea for Cal's theme, for example, but over the course of the game, because there's so much gameplay, that theme really develops. By the end of the game, it's taken on a whole new life than it had in the very beginning of the game.
Thanks, little droid. Okay, let's try this again. Okay.
The favorite material that I've had to work on is everything to do with BD-1, but just because it's such a unique and charming character.
Cal might go through some tough emotional moments, but BD is always going to be there to encourage him.
You know, very much the fact it's sort of a boy and his dog kind of story. The way to approach that musically was kind of like a nostalgia trip.
No, we are not doing that again.
There's a section in the game where you're on Kashyyyk and you're climbing the origin tree. It's about a 15 to 20 minute long piece of music. It's almost like a symphony that starts from the very ground level all the way to the top. That was probably my favorite moment to write for.
We are getting ready for our first scoring session in London. We've written about...
I don't know, probably close, almost 50 minutes of music.
Yeah,
which
just
we've
probably
written so far.
plenty for a session.
We recorded Jedi Fallen Order's score at Abbey Road Studios in London, and we're using the London Symphony and the best musicians that London has to offer.
So any aficionado of Star Wars will know that from Empire through to the end of the prequel trilogy was all recorded there.
The first time I heard the orchestra play, I thought we were listening to one of John Williams' scores on the speakers, just sound checking.
It has a special thing, and you hear it. I mean, you really do feel it. You know, you're standing in the same spot that, you know, the Beatles' Day in the Life was recorded conducting a symphony orchestra. There's nothing better than that.
right, we're good. We're moving on.
One of the things that Gordy and I have had a lot of fun with is finding versions of instruments that are sort of either forgotten or lesser used. So we have like a contrabass clarinet, and this thing looks like a plumbing fixture. I mean, it's huge, but it has something you haven't heard before.
Good.
Nice.
Okay, great.
Nice.
Good stuff.
Good job.
Good afternoon.
Good job, team.
Stephen has a very unique voice, and he's got a very colorful way of thinking about music.
It's incredibly rewarding to work with Gordy because there's things that he did with my themes that I'd never have thought of, and I was sort of like, just hearing them for the first time was a joy, because you're like, oh, I'd never have thought to do that.
Stephen brings very fine espresso coffee, and Gordy brings great whiskey. So between the two of them, they're an absolute delight to work with. I just love working with those guys.
I hope that when the player finishes playing Jedi Fallen Order, that they will feel like they were taken on a journey, in part because of the music.
We hope you love it, but I mean, I think it's one of those ones where we hope it feels like a cohesive part of the story, to the point where the game is part of a bigger whole. You certainly can't watch the films without the music. They're married to each other, so I hope we achieve that sense of just, this is just a unique and an amazing ride.